Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel for our weekly 6-scale recap series, where we'll be looking at teasers, pre-order announcements, releases for the week, anything newsworthy in the 6-scale world that might not have merited its own video. And we did take a slight break last week to cover all the teasers and reveals coming out of A.K.A. and China Joy. But this week we're back to our normally scheduled programming, and there have been a number of interesting 6-scale figure stories that I think are worth discussing. But before starting and getting into things for this week, I have to go into that mandatory disclaimer. I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. I'm not affiliated with any resellers either, and I'm not using these videos as a sales post, which is why I don't post links for purchasing these. The purpose of these videos is just for me to discuss interesting news items that are posted on social media, Facebook, or the like that impact 6-scale figure collecting, and in particular, things I find interesting or products I'm tempted to get for my own collection. And I do think once pictures go public for announcement, it's pretty much up for discussion. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into things, and we'll start with teases. And honestly, the big one for the week is coming courtesy of X06, with some reveals coming out of the Star Trek convention currently ongoing in Las Vegas. And the biggest reveal, bar none, was a line of 5 figures from Star Trek Strange New Worlds, consisting of Captain Christopher Pike, Commander Una, Nurse Chapel, Lieutenant Spock, and Lieutenant La'an Noonien Singh. I do think off the bat there are 2 big omissions, and that's Ensign Uhura, who is clearly an important legacy character, and Dr. Mbenga, who has been killing it as the chief medical officer on board the Enterprise for the 2 seasons of the show so far. So look, I am personally excited about this line. I think next to Marvel, Star Trek in general is essentially the next big line I'm collecting right now. And for me, what makes things interesting is that I like the classic shows like Voyager, DS9, TNG, but I'm also really enjoying modern Trek, even getting a kick out of Lower Decks. But just like with Marvel, I'm not really interested in picking up figures or statues from the animated stuff. But going back to the figures that were displayed here, I do think I plan on picking up most, if not all of these, if I'm able to. Now, I think the images posted on StarTrek.com were from older prototypes, because both Pike and Spock seem to look much better at the actual convention floor. Nurse Chapel looks okay, but I do think Una and La'an need some work on maybe not the sculpts but the paint apps. Uniforms on all of these look good, and they're starting to take on that more classic Trek look, but they're a little more complex. Although I had been anticipating a Pike release from Star Trek Discovery, which X06 had previously teased, because I did like that uniform. At this point though, I'm just hoping that they'll release any Pike. With this version, they're now up to 3 that they've teased, with the one that I just mentioned from Discovery, one coming from the classic original series unaired pilot, The Cage, and then this one. So I just want them to put one up for pre-order, because I'm looking forward to getting a Pike. And I think it's nice that there's a possibility that we're going to get a big chunk of the crew here for Strange New Worlds. Now, the only other teases were B'Elanna and Neelix from Voyager, which we were expecting, Savick from the Wrath of Khan line, and Dr. Julian Bashir from Deep Space Nine, although I'm thinking that was an early prototype because it did look a little rough overall. So I think a decent showing overall, although I would have loved to have seen the Picard Season 3 figures on display, or some more TNG ones. But those still do seem to be coming our way. Again, it was mentioned on social media that they're actually getting ready to be prototyped and put in pre-order, so hopefully we'll see those soon. Now, there was one other reveal here, which was Commander Kruge from the Search for Spock, but we'll discuss him in more detail in the announcement section. So again, decent showing, really teasing the future of the line, and I think it'll be interesting to see how X06 continues to develop. So now let's move on to announcements, and just continuing on with X06, they have officially launched their first Klingon figure for pre-order. And again, it's Commander Kruge from Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, as portrayed by Christopher Lloyd. So first, let's talk figure. I think he looks pretty impressive. Sculpt work looks pretty accurate and well done, with great detail work on the skull ridges and the facial hair. And I think there's no mistaking who it's supposed to be from the movie. I think the resemblance is pretty uncanny. I also think the rooted hair here turned out well. Detail work on the uniform is also really impressive, with all the armor plating and the Klingon writing on the gauntlets. And just overall, I think it continues that impressive tailoring work that we've come to expect from Exo-6. Looking at the uniform, it's clear that this is easily the most complex figure that Exo-6 has tried to tackle, with all those armor pieces as well as just all the different type of clothing sets on the arms and the pants. I don't see anything here about actual metal components, but it does seem like the chain holding his holster onto the shoulder could be metal. Overall, I think it's a really impressive looking release, and I think it could be an indication of what's coming our way with the rest of the original series movie line, in particular those Wrath of Khan figures. Now, there are a couple of things that stand out here. First of all, with Kruge, Lieutenant Commander Data, and even the Pike and Spock reveals from Strange New Worlds, which look impressive, I think it's pretty clear that some characters are getting a better treatment than others from Exo-6. I mean, just looking at some of the Voyager crew, they clearly don't have the same level of detailing or the same likeness we're seeing with Kruge. So I guess it's just something that I'm starting to expect with Exo-6, and it's something that, while for me isn't a big deal breaker, definitely has to get factored in when looking to pick up some of the secondary characters. The other thing we have to talk about is price point. This is the most expensive figure from Exo-6 right off the bat, coming in at basically $300. Do I think it's worth it? Looking at the promo pics, I do think he looks great, and with the complexity associated with the sculpt work and the uniform, I can't say that the cost is totally unexpected or unjustified. But these are now Hot Toys level prices, and the question that at least I have to ask myself is, has Exo-6 convinced me that they're worth Hot Toys prices? Prior to this release, their base figures were coming in at $175 to $200, with some being a little more expensive, like Locutus coming in at around $225. So not that those are cheap figures, but coming in at that lower price point, that lower tier, kind of afforded Exo-6 a little bit more leeway in terms of things that could be forgiven. For example, for me, Harry Kim and the upcoming Tom Paris, even with the weaker sculpts, were figures I could forgive a little, because I felt that for $175, I was still getting a solid figure release overall, and I wasn't necessarily expecting Hot Toys or even Damn Toys quality. At $300, that changes, and now my expectations are going to be pretty sky high, and I'm going to expect a figure that delivers what we get from Hot Toys, which is essentially top-notch sculpt work and paint detailing. So we can't get any funky eyes like what we got with Tuvok and some of the other characters. And tailoring on the uniforms and detailing on all the accessories has to be up to snuff. I am going to pick this one up. I love that trilogy of movies, starting with Wrath of Khan and culminating with The Voyage Home. And I'm looking forward to having this great-looking villain on display next to the Wrath of Khan line, which continues to look impressive. I'm just hoping that they can deliver. And that's the key. I'm expecting Exo-6 to deliver at this price point. And things that I might have overlooked for $175 or even $200 aren't really going to be able to be swept away at $300. So great looking figure, with the key question for me being, can they deliver? Now, next figure is actually coming from Virtual Toys, and it's a naval test pilot. So let's get it out of the way. This is a version of Maverick from the opening of the Top Gun sequel when he's doing the Dark Star test flight. It's not a figure I ever really expected to see, but it's a nice welcome surprise. And for me, it's an immediate pickup. There are inaccuracies from the movie. For example, the helmet is way oversized and seems more like a reuse of the YouTube pilots that I think Damn Toys released a while ago. But the flight suit itself, with the patches, looks pretty spot on, and I do think it's a unique figure that could fit in well with a classic movie shelf, or even with just military figures in general. I also love the detail work on the oxygen connections, all the hoses coming in. It's just a figure that stands out immediately. Now the sculpt. Look, I actually do think it's pretty decent. Is it Tom Cruise 100%? No. But I think it looks pretty good overall, and I think it looks better than, there's another third-party company that is doing a Maverick that just comes with the leather jacket. I do think that's probably a more iconic and requested figure, but I just found myself drawn to this version. And honestly, I'd love to have someone do a modern pilot version in his F-18 gear. this was definitely an unexpected release, but one I'm actually pretty excited about. Now, keeping with military style figures, we're also getting a version of Ghost from Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And this is coming from an offshoot of Easy and Simple, who, if you're not familiar with them, they are killing it with 6-scale military figures. I actually haven't covered military on the channel in general. I don't know if there's that much interest. I'm interested, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people cover it. So I am curious, though, if people that watch my channel might be curious to see me cover some of these announcements a little bit, because one thing I think about military 6-scale figures, they are real works of art, especially with the kit assembly and all the detailed accessories that come with them. And they really do stand out once they're kit up. So Ghost is another figure that I'm definitely getting without a doubt. First of all, he comes with that distinctive skull mask, and you do get 2 versions. I always remember that being one of the key features that stood out of the game for me. Now, he's in all black, which can sometimes seem a little boring, but the detail work here is just outstanding, and it's something that rivals your Hot Toys and so on in terms of tailoring. And honestly, not to knock InArt, but I know a lot of people were impressed with the weapons that were provided with the Joker figure. But if you look at Ghost and the accessories, you realize quickly why, even though I thought the InArt package was actually well done, I wasn't completely blown away, because these figures are already giving you these great detailed functioning weapons, essentially, with safeties that can, be toggled on and off, and so on. So really impressive. So here I love the kit, including all the SAS patches and the black and gray British flag. The rifle looks to be well done with a unique suppressor at the tip and all the detail on the body. And the handgun also seems impressively done. But the highlight for me has to be the night vision setup on the helmet. At first they look just like quad MVGs, but when you look closer, they're definitely a little bit different. And they actually have 6 lenses and also seem a little more box-like. Super unique, and definitely a piece I think is going to look really impressive on display. So this one is another day 1 pre-order for me that I already ordered, actually. Now, moving on to releases, and we have 2 for the week, both from who else? Hot Toys. And the first one is the 100th anniversary WB version of Wonder Woman with the rooted hair, with that new wool style. Now, this isn't labeled as part of the new DX Artisan line, but I do think it's essentially the first figure from that series. Maybe not in product type, but definitely in spirit. Interestingly, this one hasn't been shown on Secret Base's page. Usually when a figure drops, they do like a box reveal to show that it's been released and it's in stock. But there are some blogger pics that were released that have been posted, and somebody did post some pictures on social media showing kind of the inside of the box. And the first thing that stood out for me with those was that Hot Toys is doing something very similar to what InArt did with their rooted hair Joker, and is essentially including the sculpt separate from the body in a hard container to avoid messing up the hair. So it seems like the right thing to do for figures like this. Now, as for Wonder Woman herself, I only own a single Wonder Woman, and that's the version from the original BBS line. I haven't even unboxed her yet, to be honest, so I really don't have a frame of reference here. I do think, though, that the rooted hair looks really impressive, and I think it does work better than what we have seen previously from Hot Toys in terms of rooted hair figures. Sculpt is okay. I do feel like there are some poses and some pictures where she more closely resembles Gal Gadot, and others where the sculpt seems a little off. I'm definitely curious to see if this is a figure that just doesn't show up well on pictures. Now, I did not get this one. I thought about it, but you all know the ordeal that happened when she went up for pre-order, and the difficulty in getting her. So I'll have to wait for some videos to start popping up just to see how she turned out. But I think first impressions are promising, and promising for this rooted hairline that Hot Toys is doing. Now, next release is the Hot Toys Neo from the Matrix Resurrections. And yes, I'm getting this figure, even though I know that people weren't big fans of the movie. I actually think I'm on final payment at Sideshow, so hopefully this means he's going to be in hand soon, because Sideshow has been getting their Hot Toys figures pretty quickly recently. And look, like I said before, I know this movie didn't appeal to everyone. Did I think it was as good as the original? Not even close. To me, ranking-wise, it's the original way above all the sequels, then Reloaded, which I actually thought was a really good and really entertaining movie. Then, surprisingly, I think I would actually put Resurrections way above Revolutions. for me, Revolutions just squandered a lot of what had made the original and even Reloaded so good. Anyway, as far as the figure, I think overall it turned out well. Now, there's one glaring problem here that stands out, and that's the sunglasses. And I'm not the only one that's calling that out. A lot of people noticed it too. The Proto had these very sleek looking sunglasses, very thin, just fit well with the sculpt, and somehow the final production version has them way oversized. If it were just one shot, I might be inclined to say it was the camera angle, but every picture that shows the sunglasses, they just look ridiculous, which is a shame because this is a really simple release without many accessories, and Neo's clothes in the movie were also simple. So to get a lackluster accessory off the bat, it's not the greatest when you don't have many to start with. Now, the saving grace with the figure for me is that the sculpt looks like it turned out amazing, and it continues that streak Hot Toys has going for them. And in the movie, Neo doesn't really use the sunglasses until the very final scene in the film, so I think this would be a case where I'll be displaying him without the shades on. So I'm still excited to get him, though, and see how he turned out in hand. So that was this week in 6-Scale news. There were definitely a few other reveals, but not any that piqued my immediate interest. But let me know your thoughts on these new stories that I covered, and if there's any figure not included here that you're excited about, let me know about that too. And as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.